All right, everyone should be seeing the slides now. Once again, my name is Johan Hammerstrom, President and CEO. It may be hard to believe I'm actually the moderator. I've done this every webinar for several years now. A little bit about us, Community IT, 100% employee-owned managed service provider. And we're talking today about business intelligence. So business intelligence, as I mentioned before, are the strategies and technologies used to conduct data analysis of business information. And I turned this into a diagram that helped me think about the definition a little bit more clearly. And hopefully you're all now seeing it, and maybe the light bulb's going off for you as well. So business intelligence is really taking strategies for analyzing data, using technology to analyze that data, and conducting that analysis on business information. And as we just learned, visualization is a key part of it. And this is one of the things that's really new today, because there's a whole variety of tools now that are being developed to help organizations visualize large amounts of data. And I think that's really catalyzing kind of a new era of data analysis for all sizes of organizations, large, medium, and small. So this, we're talking about business intelligence, but we're really going to talk about data visualization and how can you in your organization really gain a foothold on business intelligence through the power of data visualization. And there are a variety of platforms now that are available for conducting this analysis. And so Gartner, one of the foremost authorities on information systems, every year releases a wide variety of these types of magic quadrant diagrams, which basically take a certain solution space, in this case business intelligence, and they analyze a variety of solutions in that solution space. So you'll see here, and basically, as with most of these types of diagrams, the farther up in the upper right-hand corner you are, the better off you're doing. And so, the bottom axis is completeness of vision. The y-axis is ability to execute. And so, they look at a variety of different software. Not everything in this diagram involves data visualization. This is the magic quadrant for analytics and business intelligence. But I think it's notable that the three leaders, Qlik, Tableau, and Microsoft, are all data visualization platforms. Some of the other ones here, like SAS, for example, is a storied package for doing data analysis. Obviously, they have a lot of data visualization tools, but you can do so much more. It's a very powerful set of software that's used by sort of major statisticians and data analysis organizations. And Salesforce is a CRM that obviously, in this case, they're looking at it as a CRM or platform that can gather business information and then analyze that information. But I think it's notable that the top three, the three leaders, Tableau, Microsoft, and Qlik, are all first and foremost data visualization platforms for business intelligence. And I want to talk a little bit about the difference between Microsoft and Tableau, because those are really the top two players. And Tableau is a more established leader really in this space. Qlik is also a bit of a leader. I have less experience with that. I've used Tableau a little bit. I've used Power BI a lot, obviously. These are some of the key differences between Power BI and Tableau, in my experience. Power BI is approachable. If you're familiar with Microsoft products, if you've used, Excel, PowerPoint, or Outlook, you're going to be familiar with the user interface that Microsoft has created for Power BI. So there's a very quick sort of uptime to using the software. It's affordable, and I'll talk a little bit about pricing for nonprofits in a minute, but it's much less expensive than any of the other tools that are out there. And what's interesting is that it's actually got the greatest sort of completeness of vision and is on par with Tableau for ability to execute. So it's pretty incredible, actually, that not only is it the absolute leader in this segment, but it also probably the lowest priced option of anything on this graph. Third, and also importantly, and I'll get into this in the final demo and section of the webinar, it integrates really well with Office 365. So if your organization is on Office 365 right now and using it, it's gonna work. I'll show you. It'll be much easier to just kind of show you how it integrates, but it makes publishing things to the cloud a lot more easy. This is kind of one of the big differences between Power BI and Tableau. Tableau is really developed first and foremost as a desktop application. And so they do have a Tableau in the cloud, and they do have software as a service versions, but it feels like it was added on later. Whereas Power BI was really built with the cloud in mind first and foremost, and the integration with the cloud is really fantastic. And I'll do some demos and you can kind of see how that works. Some of the advantages of Tableau. It's more established. It's a more fully baked product. It never ceases to amaze me the number of times I want to do something in Power BI that seems pretty easy and straightforward, whether it's a formatting change, whether it's, cleaning the data in a certain way, and I just can't seem to be able to do it in the application. And I figure it's me, and then I go to the forums and I realize everyone's having this problem. And then in 4 or 5 months, Microsoft releases an update that fixes it. So this is kind of the typical Microsoft, release, improve, update cycle, where they release a product that maybe isn't quite ready for prime time, but works well enough. And then over time, they really kind of polish it up and get it, ready to work, without any sort of hitches or bugs or anything like that. Tableau is that product. It's ready. And so if you start to use Power BI, just be aware that you may run into some funny, display, formatting, other types of glitches or issues. And I've found, doing kind of side-by-side comparisons, that the visualizations that you can create in Tableau look better than the visualizations that you can create in Power BI. Not significantly better, but it just looks like they've really focused on that in the development of their product. Obviously, one of the downsides is the cost. Tableau is anywhere from, depending on how many people in your organization you want using these products, it could be anywhere from 10 to 20 to 100 times more expensive than Power BI. So it's a significant increase in expense over Power BI. But for some organizations, it may end up being a better solution. But I think if you're just getting into business intelligence in your organization and data visualization, I couldn't recommend Power BI enough as a way of getting to know just the whole sector and what these products can do. And then if down the road you feel like there's something that Power BI isn't providing for you, you can always look at switching over to Tableau. So this is literally the money slide. This is the game changer in my view, and something that Microsoft continues to do really well. Microsoft's reputation as a company has kind of waxed and waned, and waxes again right now as a technology company. But their commitment to the nonprofit sector has been solid for the last 20, 25 years. And just look at that price. I mean, I can't help but sound like a car salesman on this slide. But $3 per user per month is just an insanely modest price for all of the things that you get with Power BI. And I try to avoid sounding like an infomercial here, but it's a really great price. And the key thing to know is that this is for Power BI Pro. You can actually download, if you have Office 365 right now, E1, E2, or E3, you can download the Power BI desktop and start using it on your own, just regular Power BI at no additional charge. And then if you want to end up sharing reports with other people, if you want some of the more advanced Office 365 integration, that's when you start paying the $3 per user per month. But if you have 2 or 3 people in your organization that you want, that want to do data analysis and they want to create reports and share them with each other, for $9 a month, $6 to $9 a month, you provide them with this incredible platform for doing that. So it's so inexpensive that they're practically giving it away, in my view. So that's why we're really going to focus in this webinar on Power BI, and we're really going to look at how Power BI can be combined with strategies to do data analysis on business information. And more than anything else, and this maybe is a disclaimer that I should have made at the outset, I don't have a background in data analysis. I don't have, not formally, and I don't have a background in data visualization. I have done a lot of it over the years in the course of running community IT and in the course of providing service for our nonprofit clients. But I'm presenting this kind of from a layperson's perspective, and my attitude about it really is that these tools are so easy to use that if you've used Excel, for example, to create a pivot table or create a chart, and a lot of people do that. They don't have a background in data analysis, but they're interested in doing some analysis on their business information, and so they pull it into Excel and they create charts and maybe even pivot tables. If you've been doing that, Power BI is really a way of kind of taking that to the next level. So Power BI is, it's something that professionals can use, but it's also something that people who are, coming from a financial background or an IT management background or a program background can use this tool as well to conduct data analysis. And I think one of the great things about data visualization is that it gets you start asking new questions when you start to see the data visually. And that's really that's the ultimate kind of strategy here. Although it can be used for more sort of formal and advanced strategies. So what kind of business information can you pull into Power BI? There's really no limit. If you have a database with data, and by database, I mean, any kind of information system that's storing data, whether it's a spreadsheet, a CSV file, or an actual database, you can pull that information into Power BI and start to analyze it. So you could look at donor data, constituent information, program data. You can pull information from your financial management package. If you have an HR system, you can pull information about staff and run analytics on it. It'll connect to Google Analytics, so you can use Power BI instead of the Google Analytics interface to look at your web analytics. You can pull data about your IT department and how well they're doing, solving problems and responding to tickets. Anything you can think of is valid business information for Power BI. So the first step in the process of using Power BI for business intelligence is to build it. You got to build the report. So as I mentioned just now, you can take information from almost anywhere and put it into Power BI. And I'm going to do a demo in just a minute, but you see here a quick screenshot from the Power BI desktop application. And these are the sort of the default or the first options that you get. Connect to an Excel spreadsheet, connect to a Power BI service that someone has set up. If you have a SQL database, you can connect to that. These are sort of generic connectors, but Microsoft also includes more specific connectors. So here you see that there's a variety of databases that Power BI supports. So ones that I've never heard of, some that maybe you've heard of or not. Chances are, if you're using a major database, it shows up here. If it doesn't show up here, they actually have generic connectors that you can use as well. And Microsoft, kind of has a long reputation for being very proprietary, but with Office 365, we've found that they've become a lot more ecumenical, and they're really sort of pulling in, they're realizing that they have to connect to everything. So you see on this list, they connect to Amazon Redshift. They actually connect to a wide variety of Amazon Web Services. And then you see here, there's a whole number of online services that you can connect into your Power BI, whether it's Salesforce, Google Analytics, I had mentioned before, Facebook, MailChimp is on here. So if you want to do data analysis, and create some custom reports on, on if you're using MailChimp for your emailing, you can do that with Power BI. So it's extensive, the number of integrations that that are provided. And I see a couple questions coming in, and since I'm flying this ship solo today, I will get to those questions at the end. So I appreciate them. As the questions come up, please go ahead and send them in through the chat channel, and then we'll definitely have time at the end of the webinar today to go through those questions. All right, so let's start with our first demo. We're going to show how you can use Power BI to load data from a variety of sources, how you can use Power BI to clean the data, connect data together from disparate sources, and then do some basic visualizations. So hopefully this works well. All right, so here I am in my demo environment. I think you can all see that. And this is generic data that I got from Microsoft, and it's basically sales of, I think, different kinds of bicycles to different countries, number of bicycles sold. So it's just a spreadsheet, just a basic spreadsheet. And then I added a tab here just to kind of show you, I don't know if these classifications are correct or not. I just made a few up just to show how we can connect these two tables in Power BI. So this is Power BI. You can download it if you have Office 365. You can download the desktop application, install it. I think it only runs in Windows still. I don't think it's available on the Mac yet. But like I said before, you don't need a Power BI Pro license to install and use the Power BI desktop application. So if you have Office 365, I believe you just go to app.powerbi.com and you can get started today. All right, so we're going to go ahead and load the data, and we do that right here. This was the window that I was showing you before. Give a second here to load up. There we go. Okay, and I'm just going to show off for a second all of the different online services that I was showing you before. GitHub, you need developers out there. QuickBooks Online, if you moved it. Smartsheet, if you're using that to manage your projects. A lot of these you'll see are beta and are still in development. And when you try to connect to one of these that's a beta, it'll tell you this is in beta. Buyer beware. You've been warned. But we're just going to start at the top. And for me, I was using Excel to do a lot of analysis internally at Community IT, doing a lot with pivot tables and charts. And it required a lot of manual work. Basically, I'd have to export the data from different sources and kind of reformat it every time I brought it into a spreadsheet. And then I kind of had to rebuild the queries and stuff. And it just was taking a long time. And one of the things that Power BI really helped with was kind of automating that process. Once I got it set up the first time around and kind of got the report and the data import exactly the way I wanted it, I could just save it, and then I'd never had to, adjust that again. It kind of automated that and saved me a lot of time. So I'm going to go ahead and connect to an Excel spreadsheet. So this is just the spreadsheet I was just showing you, March webinar demo. You can connect to a spreadsheet anywhere. Now, if it's on your desktop, obviously you have to be able to access that spreadsheet. But if you have Dropbox, Box, if you've got a spreadsheet in SharePoint, if you have it in your OneDrive, you can connect to it. As long as you can get to that through the internet, you can set up a connection over the web. So once you publish this report, it's now kind of going over the internet to get to that spreadsheet rather than having to go to your local desktop or file server. So, and actually, this is on our SharePoint site. So in the future, if I wanted to, adjust this data over time and pull it in over and over again, I would, just create a link to that SharePoint site. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and open it up, and it's connecting. And so now it shows me the two tabs in the spreadsheet. Everything is alphabetical, so it doesn't matter what order I have those tabs in. And I click on this. Okay, this could be trouble, but no, we're going to forge ahead. Power BI can fix whatever it is that looks funky here. And then here's the sales tab. And I want to import both of them. Now you have the option when you set up your import to an Excel spreadsheet of importing, just one, or you don't have to import all of them. But in this case, I'm going to import all of them. So I'll click on that, click on load, and the little wheels are going to start turning, creating the connection in the model. And once it's done, you see these little icons over here. These are your kind of critical navigation tools through Power BI. The top one is reports. The second one is the actual data that I've loaded. And the third one represents the connections between the data. So if you'll recall, I've got product, and then I created this, type of bicycle that it is based on the product name. And that's supposed to connect here to product in this table. And in Power BI, I'd really like to connect these two. I can't do it yet because this data is not clean, but once I clean the data up, I'll be able to make that connection. So yeah, as you can see, got some problems with my data here. Got all these blank values, not looking good. And that happens, right? You don't always get clean data, whether it's connecting directly to a database or exporting the data from another source. And Power BI is great at cleaning the data. And so I'm going to go into Query Editor right here. So I just click on this. And again, maybe I'm cheating in doing this. Back in the old days, you have to write some SQL query code. You'd have to have that background, that knowledge, that experience, which I don't have, but I do have experience with using, these types of Microsoft platforms, and they make it really easy. So it's clear when I go into the query editor that there's a problem with all of these null values, right? I don't want them in there. I want to clean them out. And it's possible that there's a command line that I could, process the data through before importing it that would get rid of the null values. But there's actually an easier way. If I just click on this drop-down menu here, I can unselect the null value and click OK, and now the null value is gone. It's just gone. Now, if you notice over here in applied steps, they've done all the heavy lifting for me. So they now have created automatically a query right here. You can see it up here at the top that says, basically select the rows where the column value is not equal to null. So that's the logical expression that gets rid of the null for me. And it's embedded here. This is basically, these applied steps are kind of like a sequence of query commands that are cleaning the data for me. So if I actually go back to the previous step, that's still there. So I have this history of what's being done to clean the data. And then I go back here, and this shows me the source. And this is where I could enter in the link to a web-based location rather than my desktop. But let's go back to the data the way we want it. There's one other problem with this data, and that is the headers ended up in the first row. I don't want it to be column 1 and column 2. I want the headers to be product and type. Well, I think that's a common problem because Microsoft gives you this option right here, use first row as headers. And if I just click on that, it automatically makes the first row a header. And it records that here in my list of applied steps. This is a pretty simple example, but you could imagine that you have, all kinds of problems in your data that you want to clean up, or you want to add new columns based on the values in these columns. For example, if I go over here to my sales data, maybe I want to add a column that lists, let's see, where is it? So right here, I've got month name, month number. Maybe I want a column that just lists the day of the month. I could add that in here, and then that's being done at a query level. So when the data is being pulled in, it's automatically creating these new columns for me. So I'm just scratching the surface here. There's an incredible amount of steps that you can add that really help to kind of transform the data. And this is this is a huge improvement over using Excel, because once you've created those steps, every time you import the data, it's automatically doing those transformations for you. You don't have to like do that every time you're trying to run this report. So I'm going to click close and apply, and it's applying the changes for me. And now I'm out of the the query editor, and I'm back in my Power BI, and now you can see my models is nice and clean, just like my sales data table. My model data table looks nice thanks to the query. And if I go to the relationships, it's automatically detected this relationship between product in this reference table and product in my data table. And I can just double click on that connection, and I can see here it's made a many to one relationship between these two tables. So it automatically detected that. If it hadn't, I could have gone in and added it, but because the column labels were the same, it went ahead and kind of made that assumption for me. And that's great, because now I can start, let's say data that I didn't have before was, the number of mountain bikes that were sold in a given year. So I'm going to go ahead and create a pie chart, and I'm going to add, I want to know units sold. So I'm going to drag that over here into values. And then I want to divide that out based on the type of bike. I'm going to go here to details. And now you can see we sold 43% of our sales were commuter bikes, 28% were mountain bikes, and 28% were road bikes. We can add another chart to this. So I'm going to go here. And I want to see what the sales were like over time. So I'm going to do the same. The units sold as the value. I'm going to look at it based on the type. And then I'm going to break it out based on date. Now it's showing me year over year. So obviously our sales went up nicely. But let's say we want to look at it quarter by quarter. Power BI already figures that out for you. And if you go up here to these drill down, you just drill down, and now you've got a nice report by quarter, and you can see how things looked. And you hover your mouse over the bar, and it shows you the total number of units sold. All right. So this is just that was a basic introductory demo on how you can import data into Power BI. You can build some basic reports, and you can create some interaction between different types of data pretty readily. I'm going to take a quick pause and just check and make sure. All right, got some questions. I promise I will get to those at the end of the webinar. But I do want to get to the next demo, so we'll come back to those questions. So now we've created the visualization. The next step is exploring the data. And one of the things that I've personally experienced and also seen with other organizations that use Power BI is that once you start presenting data to people in a visual format, they start to ask questions. Oh, wait a second. Okay, I never realized that, the number of recipients of our newsletter did this at this type of year. Is that for all of our newsletters? And then the questions start to come, and then you can start to modify your reports to try to answer those questions. Because that's really one of the major goals of business intelligence is analyzing your data to help provide more information, more understanding of the different forces that are affecting your organization's business. So in the next demo, I want to dive into this question of visualization in more detail. So we'll look at some basic charts, we'll look at interactive data, key indicators, some of the things you can do with formatting. And then I had this getting fancy, mainly for, you can do GIS-based maps of your data. I don't know if we'll have time for that, but I've got some fancy reports I can show you just to kind of illustrate the power of Power BI. All right, so let's head back over to our Windows environment and talk a little bit about interactive data. So one of the things you can do with Power BI is select data, and it kind of conveys, if you will, or across all of the reports on a page. So I just want to check on commuter bikes. So as soon as I click commuter bikes, then I'm suddenly seeing, just the commuter bikes. Everything else is sort of grayed out. So that's, you can have sort of interactive elements in your report. Now this is okay, but it's not really helping me because I have to hover on the report to see what the percentages are. So I'm going to go over here to format, and I can add data labels. Let's see. Oh no. Turn the legend on. So I'm going to do percent of total. So under data labels, I switched to percent of total. So now you see the legend here for the different types, and then you can see the percent of total. And I want to make it a little bit bigger so you can see, what it looks like there. Now they have these things in Power BI called slicers, which can also be helpful. So I'm going to click on my slicer right here, and I'm going to make, let's see, let's start with country. I'm going to make the slicer country. So these are the different countries that we're selling our bicycles in. But let's say you're wanting to create a report for the VP of sales in Mexico, and he or she is only interested in the sales from Mexico. All you got to do is click on this, and now it's filtered out everything except for your sales in Mexico. You see that commuter bikes are 44% in Mexico, 43%. So Mexico is pretty similar to the total sales. And let's say you just want to kind of go through and see for each country. Right, it's all pretty much the same. Yeah, it's pretty much the same. No big difference there. You can add a different type of slicer. Let's say you want to look at the date. So you can add your date right there. And you're really only interested in all of this information for the first half of 2014. So I'm just going to go ahead and slide this up to January. And then I'm going to pull this back to end of June. And now you've got those two, and I can drill down a little bit more. And now I see each month. And let's say I don't like these, like the 2014, whatever. I just want the dates. You can drill down this way, and it just takes you straight into the months. That also gives you the option to do a year-over-year analysis, or like a yearly total analysis if you're just looking at every month. So there's kind of this nice sort of interactivity here. You can also use Power BI to create sort of a key performance indicators. I'm just going to go ahead and, rather than try to build a new page, I'll just do that here. So we've got right here kind of a key performance indicators tool. That's just a card. And we want to look at total number of units sold. So now you can kind of slide through, and you can see total number of units sold in a given period of time. So your slicer kind of changes the value that shows up here. You can click there, and now, okay, I just want to see total number of commuter bikes sold over this period of time. I want to see total number of road bikes sold. So you can create, reports that have, that sort of information. Let me see if I can pull up my fancy sample report. So this is a human resources sample report. You can download it from Microsoft, and they've created a scorecard here. So this is just an example of the kind of thing that you can, if you get really advanced, the kind of thing you can do with Power BI. These are all the vice presidents in the organization. You can pick one. So this is an example of a report that you would build in Power BI. Obviously, this took a lot of work an iteration, to kind of get to this point. And then it's formatted for a mobile device. So this is something that you publish to Office 365. and then people, VPs, for example, could access it using the Power BI app on their iPhone or Android phone. So that, just credit where credit is due. This came from Obviance, and it was made available on the Microsoft site. And then here's just an example of some of the things you can do with. You can create these sort of dashboards where you're looking at the number of hires. This is obviously working on a lot of data, complex amount of data. All right, so that's quick intro to formatting, getting fancy, et cetera, et cetera. What's next? Publishing the data. So I alluded to that on the previous Power BI report. They had that one report that was very clearly formatted for a mobile device. One of the things that really, in my mind, distinguishes Power BI from other data visualization tools is the ease with which and the facility with which you can publish information to the web and share it with other people. And so this schematic, sort of gives us an overview of how that's done. So we've been, so far in our demos, simply using the Power BI desktop. Once you get the report set up the way that you want it, that you like it, you can actually publish it to the Power BI service, which is accessed through the web and is part of Office 365. And once you do that, then you can access it through the Power BI mobile app, which is available on mobile devices. So a little bit more detail. So basically, Power BI desktop, you can connect to over 50 applications. You can publish those reports to the Power BI service. That can be, you can set up special Power BI gateways to organizational data. So like if you wanted to connect to, if you wanted to warehouse your data, you could do that. And then you can access those web-based reports, through a browser or through mobile devices. So, whoops, got a little bit ahead of myself there. So let's do the demo, and I'll show you a little bit about how that works. So let's get away from our fancy human resources, and we're going to go back to our really basic bicycle sales data. So let's say this report. So I've been working on this report. I brought key stakeholders in. I showed them the report. They're like, well, I'd really rather see this. I'd like to see that. The head of the road bike division doesn't like the color red because it looks dangerous. We don't want people to think that our road bikes are dangerous. Okay, got it. How about orange? Okay, yeah, orange. Well, that doesn't look very good. Let's go with yellow, right? Bright, happy. We're out there enjoying the sunshine on our road bike. And we want to change this one as well. This is a silly little example, but it just gives you a sense of how easy it is to kind of format these things. And again, the real value here is that once you've made the change, next time I import the data, it's all just plugging right into this sort of template that I've already created. All right, so everything looks good, and we've got everyone sort of on board with this setup for the report. We want to go ahead and publish it to the web because many of the key stakeholders, executives, they're not going to want to run Power BI desktop on their Windows machine. If they have a Mac, they can't run it. They just want to go to a website where the data is so that they can analyze it and take a look at it. So go here to publish, and you'll see that, yes, I'll go ahead and save my changes. I'll just save webinar demo 2. I had another one pre-baked just in case. All right, so where do I want to publish it? I've got a number of workspaces. I've got one here for webinars. So actually, let me show you what that looks like. So this is the Power BI Office 365 interface right now. And I've got a number of workspaces. Those actually integrate with Office 365 groups. So if you have created groups for your organization, every group has a Power BI workspace already available to it. So for example, if you created a group for your FHA, for your finance and human resources and administration group, and they're sharing files in the group space, and they're using the OneNote notebook, and they want to look at Power BI reports. You can just publish those reports to that group's workspace, and everybody who's in that group will automatically have access to it. Now the catch is that it requires a Power BI Pro license, and so anyone who wants to look at these reports live in the web space will need a Power BI Pro license, and they'll need to be logged in order to access it. So right now we don't have anything. I'm going to skip that for now. Don't have any dashboards, don't have any reports, we don't have any workbooks, we don't have any data. This webinars group is completely empty, but we're about to change that. So I'm going to go ahead and select webinars to publish my information to. And so it's publishing webinar demo 2 to Power BI. Give that a second. All right. So it's all published. Now the key thing to remember is that it's not synchronized. It's just published. So if I go in and start changing the data here, let's say I get rid of this, it's gone, and I change this slider like that, those changes are not going to be reflected on this new webinar demo 2. But now I published it, it was ready instantaneously. Your data set's ready. Do you want to see it? So the data set is actually the data itself. So those data tables that I had showed you before that were associated with the Power BI desktop app, those have been published, as have the reports. So I'm going to go ahead and click here, and you can see that report that I had created. And obviously the changes I just made aren't reflected here because I published it prior to making those changes. That report that I just made is here. And now I can share that report with anyone else with a Power BI Pro in my organization that wants to see it. And there's some other cool things that you can do in the web interface. It's still interactive, so you can still do that. You can create dashboards. So like I'm clicking on that, pin the visual. I'm going to create a sales dashboard. So now when I go back out to webinars, I've got my sales dashboard here, and that just shows me that one report, that one chart, basically. But if I click on it, it takes me into the report itself, and I see the chart there. And they like to remind you about a lot of things. So the other thing you can do is you can actually edit the report on the web. So this looks similar, you might realize, to what we were just looking at. It's not as powerful. It's actually probably, for those of you who are used to the Office web apps, it's maybe a closer approximation of the desktop app than the Office web apps, like Excel Online or Word Online. But it still lacks the full functionality. But you can do some things. So let's say, to go back to my trivial example, the yellow color just isn't working, nobody likes it, we're going to switch to purple. You can make that change here on the web app, just as you would have on the desktop application, and all other kinds of advanced changes. And you can add new graphs. You can switch the graph type. So this is a traditional graph, let's say clustered column. Let's say we want a stacked column. So click here, boom, we got the stacked column. And that's good, that's the way we want it. We're going to save this report. You can do some other things from the web version that you can't do in other places, such as embedding it in SharePoint Online. So if you have a SharePoint intranet that you use, or people sort of use the SharePoint site as an intranet, you can embed these reports directly into that site. You can also export it to PowerPoint. So if I clicked on that, this would basically spit out a PowerPoint presentation with however many pages I had in this Power BI report in PowerPoint. And let's say I got this, someone shared this with me, and I really want to dive into it on my desktop. I can go and download a copy of the report and open it in the Power BI desktop app. So those are all powerful things you can do. And then I've saved it, so I'm going to switch it back to the reading view. And then I'm going to come back to here. This is just a quick overview. There's a ton of other features and functionality. Once you publish things to the Office 365, you can create, you can kind of go full circle and basically create an ODBC connection in an Excel spreadsheet back to this data set. And so now you've got the data the way you want it. You can actually now go back to where you started from and use Excel to analyze that data. I'm not going to get into that today. You can also publish it to what they call apps. That's the naming convention is a little confusing. It's not really an app in the sort of mobile sense of the term, but it does show up, I think, a little bit more easily in the actual Power BI mobile app. So that's an easy way to kind of publish that one dashboard chart, that people want to look at. All right. I think that was everything on the sharing demo that I was going to cover. And I want to leave time. We have a lot of questions, so I want to leave time for the questions. So, are you interested? Is this something that you want to explore more? You kind of want to take it for a test drive? What do you do to learn more about Power BI? Microsoft has made a number of tutorials available at powerbi.microsoft.com. You can just Google Power BI tutorial, and I think this is the first link that comes up. They have some great videos. They have some great guides, for doing some basic things in Power BI. I've found that it's a little frustrating at first, but once you spend a couple hours with it, it really starts to flow and gets a lot easier. And Microsoft has some great resources for helping you learn how to use Power BI. Whoops, I've done that twice now. All right, before we get to the questions, and I want to thank everyone for joining us this afternoon for this overview of Power BI for nonprofits. I did want to highlight next month's webinar. It's going to be Wednesday, April 18th, the third Wednesday of the month at 4 o'clock. Our Chief Technology Officer, Matthew Eshelman, will be just back from New Orleans, where he will be attending the 18th Nonprofit Technology Conference. And we'll be presenting, actually, with one of our clients, a session on email encryption, which is going to be really interesting. So if any of you are concerned about email security, you want to make sure that nobody, and I mean nobody, has access to your email. This is a great session, and I'd encourage you to go check it out. And I encourage you to sign up for April's webinar. Matt's going to be providing us with his roundup from the 18th NTC. I'm not able to go this year, so I'm looking forward to that webinar. And I encourage any of you who attend or aren't able to go to join us for that webinar as well. All right, well, let's move on to some questions. And a lot of questions about not being able to see the slides. Again, apologize for that. Click, the Click product, the Click company is Click, and the product is ClickView. So ClickView is just their data visualization product. And I have very little experience with it, so I don't feel I can speak to it too much. The next question, how difficult is it to combine data from multiple sources into one report? It's very easy. It's actually, it's really simple. So if going back to the desktop here really quickly, I've created this one report. I could now get additional data from a different source and feed it into, this is my original demo. So here we go. I could just go here and add data from another source. I think the bigger challenge you're going to run into is, and then, I'm sorry, when I add data from that source, it's just going to show up as a new data table. So let's say you have a SQL connection, you have a SQL database. So you just go here, you put in SQL Server, you'd enter the authentication credentials, and then it would bring up that loading window. And at that window, you would pick which tables you wanted to import, and those would just show up here. So once the table is imported into the Power BI, the PBIX file, you can combine that and it just shows up here, and you can put multiple data sources on a single report. The bigger challenge is linking the data, and if you don't have some sort of unique identifier kind of connecting fields, between two different data tables from different sources, that could be a bigger challenge. But if you have that, then it's, from the standpoint of using the application, it's very straightforward. All right. All right. So you use Office 365, but you're using Macs. Everything I showed you, you can do in the web interface. So let me go back to the web interface here. So you could create a new report, a new data set. So you could create a new data set. You could import a file, like an Excel file. You could connect to a live database. So that can be done through the web. You could also, once you import that data set, you could create a new report, from an existing data set. You pick your data set or import new data. So technically, not just technically, realistically, you could do everything that you can do with the desktop version through the web interface. It's not going to be as pleasant. I actually have a Mac, and for a variety of reasons, I use Parallels. That's what I'm running this Windows 10 desktop on, not just for Power BI. I have tried creating reports and importing data and cleaning the data and everything in the web interface, and it can be done, but it's not altogether pleasant. It's more challenging. I'll just put it that way. Next question: how do I transfer ownership or add a new owner of a report? I tried to share with my Pro subscription, and the intended recipient can only view the report. They also have to have a Pro license. So that's really kind of the downside with Power BI. That's the evil genius of Microsoft coming through. You can create and share reports, but they have to be, they also have to have a Power BI license. And I believe they have to be in your organization as well, or federated through Azure AD if you have that. Now, the one exception is you can publish data publicly and share it with anyone. And actually, I've seen this, organizations who just want to share their information publicly, they'll create the report in Power BI, and then they'll create basically a public link and embed that in their website. And so nowadays, you'll run into sort of interactive infographics on a lot of sites. And oftentimes, it's pretty obvious, like, oh, this was created with Power BI. So that's sort of the one exception. But that's really for sort of public interest type work. In most cases, you're not going to want to share your information with the world. The next question: how much setup do you do versus when you hand over to non-IT data staff for them to update, create themselves? That's a great question, and I think it varies based on the technical proficiency of the non-IT staff. If they're data staff, like if they're data analysts, then other than kind of getting the software installed on their system and kind of getting all the workspaces and everything set up, once you show them how to import the data, they're probably good to go in terms of figuring out the application for cleaning the data. For more sort of executive staff, you probably need to more or less publish the data for them, schedule a meeting, use the meeting to kind of run through the report for them, and then work backwards from there. Like, give them access to the website and see if it's something they want to go in and work with. But I guess maybe to better answer your question, once this is all set up, it doesn't need to be set up again. So let's say I had used a SQL database instead of an Excel spreadsheet to pull these data tables. It would update. They would just hit refresh, and it would requery that database every time they opened it. And you wouldn't really need to do any of the stuff that you were doing. Like the query editor, all of that, that's all saved now. All of this stuff is saved, and they could, start to, refresh the data and start to analyze it on their own. So that sort of framework, doesn't need to be set up again. Can you apply more than one slicer at a time? Yes, I believe you can. Put another slicer on here, and we'll do country this time. So now we got Mexico in 2014. And you can do Mexico and France in 2014. You can also, if you don't want the slicers, like let's say you're just creating a report for the VP of sales in Canada, like this whole thing is just for her, and she doesn't want to see any of the other stuff, you can create these report level filters here. So I can come down, bring the country there, just pick Canada, and now every page on this report is going to be just Canada. Or I'm going to make this one Canada. Oh, Canada. And then move it up. Ugh. Move. I just have to recreate it. Country page level filter. Now this page is Canada. And I'll duplicate the page. And then I'll make this page Mexico. And now this everything on this page is Mexico. And then you know, rinse and repeat. You can do that for all of the pages. And you could, I think you can insert visuals pretty quickly. So you could put, you know, the flag, the country flag up here. So it's visually, you know, pretty similar. Do users have to log into Office 365 online to see the reports? They do. They do have to log in online. How do you keep the data updated? Can you link it to the source data so that it gets updated daily or on an interval that you select? Great question. So I was using the spreadsheet because it was an easy example, but let's just say I had an, you know, a SQL database, an ODBC connection to a SQL database instead. If on the desktop version, when I hit refresh, it'll just refresh it for me. On the web version, you go to datasets and you click that refresh button there and it refreshes it now. This isn't going to work because if you recall, I had this connected to a spreadsheet on my desktop, so it's not going to work. But what you can do, you go to settings and you can schedule a refresh. So I can change the source to a SQL database. I can have it refresh automatically. This is another feature that is not available if you don't have Power BI Pro. And I think it's restricted to a day with Power BI Pro, and it can be done continuously or more frequently with Power BI Premium, which is more expensive. But you can set up a scheduled refresh. You can set up alerts. I don't have any, but you can set it up to email people when the reports are done. So let's say you want the data to refresh on a weekly basis and the report will be updated and you want an email to go out to, you know, key stakeholders. You can set that up here and all of that kind of runs behind the scenes. Okay. Is there a way to make this much bigger? And I don't know if that refers to the GoToMeeting screen share, or if that refers to the Power BI. So yeah, I've struggled with the same thing. I'm on a 24-inch monitor right now, and I feel like this is just about as small as I'd want to go to work with Power BI. I've tried to do it on my desktop, and it gets really tiny, really quick. This is one of those things where you can switch to actual size, fit to page. This is one of those things where Microsoft it's not quite fully baked. Maybe I'm missing it, but I don't know if there's a zoom feature on this to zoom it in. That's something that's missing. So, kind of no, there isn't really a way to make it bigger. Although I may be missing something obvious as far as that goes. All right. Can it be done on an iPad, iOS? I know that you can see the reports in iOS. I haven't tried modifying them on the mobile app, so I don't know if it's possible or not. That's a great question. I'll have to look at it. A follow-up from the earlier question about adding a new owner, trying to share with pro subscription, and the intended recipient can only view the report. I think that is a limitation of the system. So thank you for your follow-up. He replied that they do have a pro subscription, but they still can't edit. So that's a good question. I think that might be a limitation as well. I could be wrong about that, but that could be a limitation. Yes. So, and also a follow-up on the automatic updates. Suggestion was made, could you add something that showed you the last time the report was updated? And that's a good idea. It does tell you, whoops, right? I thought it said on here when it was at last updated. I'm not seeing that now, but the data set gives you that, although you're right, that's a little wonky. It'd be nice to have that in the report itself. There's probably a way, and I'm just not aware of it. All right. Well, we've gone a little bit over, but I appreciate everyone's attention today. Thank you all for joining us for this webinar. As I mentioned before, the slides and recording will be published to our website, and we look forward to you joining us next month for our 18 NTC Roundup. Have a great afternoon, everyone. Take care.